Dr. Martha Bone here. This is Lecture 2 for English 101 Online. Lecture 2 is actually about Paper 1. I got over the weekend, I don't usually answer emails over the weekend, but I just was checking something and noticed that several people sent in a paper. The paper is not due. And I checked those papers, and the majority of them, I didn't read them all the way through, but they didn't even follow. Only one of them even pretended to follow the sample paper, and they would have been e-papers, except maybe one might have passed. Folks, you need to be following the directions. It says paper 1 assigned, the terrible word list up, the sample English paper up. It says nothing about a paper being due. The paper 1 is due on Monday, January the 30th at 6:30 in the morning. It is can be turned in until the end of the week, that week. If you can already write a paper, you wouldn't be taking this English class. Now, I know some of you, it'll be a piece of cake, and some of you have never done it before. But we have to go on a schedule, and it's my schedule. So be watching what you're doing. The paper will be turned in on Blackboard. Everything else you do in this course after the biography will be turned in on Blackboard. And we have on Blackboard a thing called Safe Assign, which checks your paper for plagiarism. It looks up if your paper was lifted whole from the internet, it'll tell me that. So I don't have any trouble usually with that, but that's one reason that we're using a Safe Assignment. We assign it that way. I will open the place for you to turn in your paper when it is due January the 30th, Monday, okay? This is week 3, and it says MLA, this MLA book, we're going to talk about it in a minute. We're going to start with page 1, and I'm going to show you some things. And then the works cited page is due for paper 2. I will open the works cited page up probably Thursday, and I'll send you an email. It's up, and you can turn in your works cited page. I do that because if your works cited page is bad, then I can't accept the paper. And so I try to fix the works cited page at the beginning a week before, so you'll know your citations are right. Then you can spend time with the body of your paper, getting the writing, spending your time on the writing, which is, of course, the most important thing. Now, I don't mean to scold on a Monday morning. At least I'm taping this on a Monday morning. But remember, I said in my first lecture that one of the things I try to teach in English 101 is to follow the directions. And that is one of the big things you need to learn to do, because you don't have to memorize any of this or anything that I'm going to suggest to you. You don't have to memorize it. You just need to know where to look it up. And if you can look it up and do the work in this course, English 101, a building block course, then you can look it up in other courses, even if it's a different way of doing things. Once you learn to follow directions and look things up, you'll have that with you the rest of your life. Okay, lecture over. Now, here are some things that I wanted to say up front. First of all, do not use any databases. No databases are allowed in this course. There's a reason for that. I want you to look up your own things. I want you to follow the schedule. We're going to turn everything in on Blackboard. Now, there is a website called OWL, which I believe I talked about before, OWL, the Online Writing Lab of Purdue University. It's absolutely free of charge. You can look it up on the internet, excuse me. Now, we are using the new MLA book because it is new. And it even says it's not a new edition, it's a new style on the back of the book. You can read it. But I find this book a little bit difficult. And OWL follows the new MLA. So if it's on OWL, it's correct. And if it's in this book, it's correct. And you can say, Dr. Bone, look this up. This is where I found it. And I will count it correct. Now, OWL has on the left-hand side of your screen, which I won't use my hands because your left and my left are opposite now, but on the left-hand side of the screen, there is a table of contents when you pull up OWL, and it's the first OWL to come up. Click on the website, and a page will come up, and on the left-hand side, you can go down the table of contents, and at the almost at the bottom, it says MLA style. Click on that. And after you click on that, another page will come up, and it will have MLA. And there will be another table of contents. So that table of contents, you can look down it, and it'll say sample works cited page, sample paper, additional works cited samples, works cited on the internet, using the internet, books, magazines, all of that stuff is there, and I think very easy to find. So if it's on the MLA, on OWL, I will count that correct. Now, any other textbook that you get, remember the new MLA, which is a new style, according to them, came out in 2016 in the summer. So that makes so many things that you'll find out of date. So those two places are where you go, OWL and this handbook. Okay, follow the calendar of assignments. Some people wrote and said, was anything due? And I said no. But those of you who've gone ahead and written a paper and just sent it to me, you've got work to do now. You've got to start over. Okay? I don't remember your name, so it doesn't, not going to affect you. But this week, we're going to have the works cited page due for, and that should be for paper 1. That's, I can't believe I made that mistake. And lecture 2 on YouTube. That's what happened. The lecture will be up on today, Monday the 23rd of is it still January? Of January. Okay. And then the quiz will be put up on Friday. I'm doing that on purpose because I don't want you to just watch this as quick as you can and then answer the questions as quick as you can and forget it. Because I think you need to watch this lecture more than one time. Okay? And because you can go back and find things out. But the quiz is up Friday, January 27th. Also because one of the problems with online courses, and any teacher will tell you this, and any student will tell you this, is cheating. So I don't just give you 5 days to take a quiz. Okay, so today I want to talk about what's in the book and some rules. Okay, now you should have read already the first 18 pages of this textbook, but I want to bring some things up from the very beginning. And you'll notice I've written it in my book. You can see that in green. There's some more. I suggest that you do this. I didn't cough at all this morning until I started talking to you all. Okay. They talk about a few principles that you want, author title and publication materials, and that your documentation needs to be useful to readers. Now, here are the things on page 4 that they say the reason we use citations. We are documenting sources because we are part of an academic endeavor to talk about subjects that interest us, and when you go to graduate school, subjects that are going to pretty much control your life, because you're going to, if you go to graduate school, say you go to law school, law is going to be what you're going to do. If you go to school, get a PhD in English, like me, you're going to teach English for a long time, because that's why I got that degree. And also because I love what I do. Anyway, you want to demonstrate the thoroughness of your research. And remember, we're starting with a very short paper so that we can build on little blocks. Give credit to the original sources, because if you don't, you're stealing from people. And ensure that the reader, the person reading your paper, in this case me, but other people will be reading your papers later, find the sources. I kind of got lost in that sentence. Make sure your reader can find out where you got the material you're using. This is what they call fact checking, and it's gotten to be kind of a national pastime. You don't want to be caught plagiarizing or making anything up, because it will destroy your career later. Okay, so we start out doing it right, and we end up doing it right. Anyway, I'm not doing a good example there, so I'll go on. Now, MLA has at the bottom of page 4, think about what you're writing about. Select, that is, select your sources, figure out the information you need to have and get it. And then thirdly, to organize. Those 3 things. Okay, now you document sources because, as I said, we're part of this conversation, scholarly conversation about a topic. They have a discussion of plagiarism here on page 6 and 7. You might want to look up plagiarism on the student handbook for the system and MCTC to see what we said, see what the, wait a minute, I'm going to get this. To see what might happen if you're caught plagiarizing. It's not worth it, trust me. Plagiarism later in life, people are caught plagiarism, copying, cheating. It's a serious moral and ethical offense. Now, there's some problems now in our country about plagiarism, about lying, that we need to be watching on the news, but this is for school, and this is for your career, and it can destroy a career. People who are caught, professional writers, plagiarizing, they suffer public embarrassment, diminished prestige, a loss of credibility, and they're likely to lose their jobs. Now, I think there's a simple way to remember this. If you're going out with some guy or gal, and he or she lies to you and says, well, you know, I went out with some buds or some girlfriends or whatever to a bar and had a drink, and you found out that he went away for the weekend with another woman or man, either way, how are you going to trust him the next week when he says he'll do something or he did something? Once you lie to somebody, your credibility is diminished. Okay. One instance of plagiarism can cast a shadow across an entire career. There's no question. Now, schools consider this a grave matter. I'm maybe doing too much with this. One, because plagiarism undermines the relationship between teachers and students. Students who plagiarize don't learn anything. You aren't here just to get 3 credit hours, folks. You're here to learn something. And if you don't learn what you need in 101, English 101, you won't be able to do English 102. You're here to learn something. And plagiarism also undermines public trust in educational institutions. And public trust is I think at a fairly low level right now. We certainly don't want to make it worse. You want your degree to mean something. When someone cheats and gets that degree, it diminishes every student's degree. Now, there's a question on page 8 of the book, the textbook, that you all know what I'm doing, I hope. I hope you're following along, because this is not a joke, okay? Follow along. Write down some numbers, some pages where you can look things up. Okay, is it possible to plagiarize yourself? Yes. And if you turn in a paper or quote me something you've written before, that's a 0. As far as I'm concerned, it's cheating. And remember, we are going to use the plagiarism check. Now, if you paraphrase things, you also have to tell me. If you quote something from a movie, you have to tell me. You have to tell me where you got everything that's not in your head right now. You have an opinion about something, even if you don't understand the topic to start with. You look up what factory farming is. By the time you finish reading what it is, you've got an opinion about it, okay? So, but anything else, borrowed material has to be given a source. Now, there is such a thing as common knowledge, and those are things like Abraham Lincoln's birth date, or the date of the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand and his wife Sophia in Sarajevo, which is often called the beginning of the First World War. There's no question about those dates, okay? There's no question about who was assassinated and who did the assassinating. But, so those things are common knowledge because they'll be the same in every single book that you look it up. Then you get to things like opinion, thoughts about it, reasons for it, what happened after and why. So there's a difference between fact and opinion. So those basic facts, which are the same in every source, that is common knowledge. You don't have to give a source for that because it's the same everywhere. Okay. Now here's something I need to talk about seriously, especially now in the internet world. And that is making sure you use a reputable source. A reputable source. And we have talked about this on campus, and students came up with things like a news source that you recommend. That you recognize, like NBC, CBS, and newspapers which are commonly known, such as the Washington Post, the Maysville Ledger Independent, the New York Times, the Seattle whatever. Those things we can assume are as reputable as you get. One of my favorite newspapers that I read it every day online is the Guardian newspaper. It used to be the Manchester Guardian. It's a British newspaper. It is of liberal bent, I know that, but it gives a view of the world that isn't completely United States, and I like that. I also like some of the writers. Barbara Kingsolver, who's a Kentucky writer, has been published recently in The Guardian. So look for those newspapers that you know about, that you've heard about. If something is connected to a university that makes sense to you that you've heard of, Harvard, Yale, University of Kentucky, Eastern, Middle Tennessee State University, any state universities, any universities you've heard of, Tulane, names are popping into my head. Those are generally reputable sources. Community college publications are reputable sources because it's not just one person sticking that stuff up there. It's a group of people who check. I can't just put anything up on our website. It has to go through a process. That means somebody else is checking it too, just like something being published in a newspaper. Now, why is this so important? It's important because you can teach, this is only slightly a joke, you can teach an orangutan to type, and they can put something on the internet. That's one reason we don't use Wikipedia, as this book says, and I love them for saying it. It's on page 12. You can start with Google, you can start with Wikipedia, but you can't end with them. And that's because anybody can put anything on Wikipedia. It's not edited enough. There are also what we call fake news sources, and they're all over. You can hardly bear it. I was reading my Facebook page last night, and I only do Facebook because it's how I keep up with a myriad of my relatives, younger relatives. But I've also, people on Facebook, they know what you read before, so they send you stuff. And I like some of the stuff I got, but the truth is I didn't recognize any of those sources. I mean, you can put you can put up conservative me or liberal you dot whatever, and send me something, and I don't know if that's any good or not. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's legitimate. I don't know if the pictures are doctored. So stick with reputable sources, especially be careful about online sources. And they give you who, what, how, when, and where. That's what you're looking for. Ask yourself those questions. We're page 11, 12, and it's also on this page, who, what, when, how, when. We used to say it in journalism, who, what. I can't even say it now. Who, what, when, where, and why. That's what we said. Anyway, examine the work for fact of publications. On page 14 and 15, they give you the front page of the book, and then the publication information is always, here's the title page of this book, and there is the publication information. And of course, you always take the latest date, because what you're holding in your hand is the latest. Okay. Then they give you the story, poem, or book in a periodical, a work on the web on page 17. Now, in the list of the works cited, they give you the things that go into works cited, creating your own documentation. And there are the core elements. In blue, author, title of source, title of container. That's the book it came in, or the magazine, or the website. Other contributors, version. You don't need all of those things, but then they give you how to give an author's name, note how to do that. The Crown of Columbus, they give you all kinds of et al. And stuff here. Television and movies on page 24. Publications, which are, by the way, don't ever use anonymous. Just if there is no author, you start with the title. I don't want to get, so I'm telling you everything in the book, but look these things up. This is top of page 25. The corporate authors. That's things published by the United Nations, the National Endowment for the Arts. Collections are on page 27, 28. It's a simple rule about italics. If it's a book, it's italics. If it's part of something else, like a poem or an essay, it's in quotation marks. If it's a movie, it's in italics. If it's a TV program such as Seinfeld, it's in italics. But if it's just an episode from Seinfeld, it's in quotation marks. All of that is in here, okay? Now, a posting or an article on a website is page 28. And they give you email messages and so forth, but no tweets. They talk about tweets. This is my rule. No tweets. All right? I'm going to show you some other things right there. All right. And then the type of the title of the container, usually in italics. The website, bottom of page 30. And then they talk about a container, within a container. So you could have a collection of a volume that combines 3 books together. You can read that if you need to. I don't think you will. Now, here are examples on page 32 and 33 of different entries that you might make, and other things adapted by, illustrated by, and we're getting over to simple examples of works, which I think that you all can look up. There are DVDs on page 44. You may use movies, you may use television programs, news programs, but you have to come up with the information. And then they talk about URLs. That's the address up at the top of the page when you're looking things up on the internet. You may put in a URL if you wish to. Okay, so the last name only in-text citations start on page 55, 54, 55. You need to read that and know what you're doing, okay? And send me questions if you want to, if you don't understand something. An in-text citation in MLA is simply telling me where you got it, okay, in the text of your paper. So, for example, if I wanted to say, in Chris Bojalian's book, Skeletons of the Feast, he says, and give you a quotation marks. Give you the quotation in quotation marks. All I need at the end of that is the page. And the page would be the page would be in parentheses at the end of that quotation. You have to put quotation marks if it's a direct quotation. Then in parentheses, the page. So 153. Close the parenthesis, period. Okay? All of this is in the textbook. You can see how they do that, and they give you examples. Now, I always think it's much easier to put it in the text. Because if I didn't have Bojalian's, I always call him that, it's Bojalian. You can look him up on YouTube, so you can hear how his voice, how his name is pronounced. I think it's easier to say Wordsworth, Milton, Shakespeare, Barack Obama, whatever you want to use, whoever you're quoting. And then just have to put the page number if there is a page. And usually online there is no page. So it's easier to put it in the text. If you don't put the name of the author in the text or the beginning of or the title of the article, you have to put it in parentheses. And then you would just put Smith 24. No commas, no p periods, none of that. Watch out for your punctuation. So you have to identify, they say on page 57, the source in your text for every kind of borrowing, not only quotations, but facts and paraphrased ideas. If I were to write about the bridge from Covington into Cincinnati, 275, which is in terrible shape, and I was going to write about that, I might want to tell you how many cars and trucks go over that bridge every day. It's a double-decker bridge. I'd have to look that up. And if I look it up and get that number, it's not the same number everywhere like somebody's birthday. There's a difference of opinion. Yesterday was the Women's March, and they have a very good idea, whoever they are. I'd have to look it up who I'm quoting, because some people say in Chicago there were 20, I'm making these numbers up, and there were 20,000 women there, men, women, and children. It wasn't just women. Or somebody might think there were 15,000. Some people think there are more than 25,000. So that's an opinion, because there's no way to exactly count. Now, most of those numbers are going to be close, but nonetheless, I need to tell who I am quoting. I hope I'm not talking too fast or too slow, but whatever. I'm doing my best here. You know we're getting to know each other. So, now, the last thing on page 58, which is what you're supposed to read through page 58 this week. Remember that the goal of the in-text citation is to provide enough information to lead your reader directly to the source you used without disrupting the flow of your paper. Now, let me give you some examples. I have put up a sample paper, and this is the sample paper. You can see at the top, this is a format. It has your name. It has my name. You can put Dr. Bone or Professor Bone, but not both. And please spell my name right. I've been called Boone and Boney this week alone. And I know. Remember, it's just like a bone in your leg and you won't forget it. The name of the course, it's English 101, and please put Z, although it really won't matter, just get English 101. And then the date. Now, notice the date here. Notice the date on every MLA thing. It is reversed. It's not like we do it. We usually say this is January 23rd, 2017. MLA says 23 January 2017. You can abbreviate the month. They do that to take out a comma. But in MLA, the date is always reversed. It's always reversed. It's always 23 Jan 2017. No comma there, nothing. Okay? The only punctuation you might have is a period if you abbreviate the month. Now, one of the papers I looked at, and just in passing while I was getting it off my email, because that was not the appropriate place for it to be turned in, but that person did the date wrong. They'd at least looked at what the format should be, but the date was wrong. Then, there's a very long title here, but it is centered. Okay? Now, one thing I don't like about this paper is the first paragraph is way too long. Way too long. Way too long. Now, okay. He has, whoever wrote this, has quoted, Lochte said his own actions were immature. And this is, you can't see that. It's an article by a guy named Ansari. Okay? Now, if you look on this sheet, when you get out your sample paper, which I hope you have out now, you can see that that's at the very top of the page because this is in alphabetical order. Okay? By the author, or if there is no author, the first words of the title. Now, the purpose is to get me from this page, where he's quoted, to this page, so that I can get the source if I want to. Now, this is in alphabetical order. The bottom you'll see, if you look at your sample paper, there are some interviews. And I wanted to talk about that because you've got your assignment and that you must have 2 interviews of somebody you know, but who's not in your English class, okay? So you can ask your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, uncles, cousins, whoever. And how do you do that? And frankly, I looked in the MLA handbook today and couldn't find it. I know it's on the OWL. So I made a sign here. That's how you do it. Last name, first name, kind of interview. I've got personal interview, email interview, text interview, Skype interview. I even forgot phone interview, but you can have telephone interview. Okay? Text interview, I guess, is a phone too. No tweeting. Okay? No tweeting. Don't give me any tweets from somebody. An orangutan can tweet too. Okay, I need to calm down, not get excited about tweets. At least I do text. I'll let you do text now. I used not to do that. Okay. So, I'm putting up a 5-paragraph theme sheet today. You got your sample paper up. I will put up this sheet, samples of interview sources. Now, look at your calendar and let's go over this one more time. This is week 3. You're to read and mark and look at the first 58 pages of your textbook. The works cited page is going to be due for paper 1. Now I will let's see, let's make that due Thursday, the 26th. Nope, Thursday. Yeah, Thursday the 26th. I'm going to put WC paper due. I'll send you an email. Now I'm going to set up a place for that, and it will be on Blackboard, and I will grade it from there. Now I want to just look at it. If it's correct, you get 25 points, okay? I will count off if it's not correct. Alphabetical order, and remember this page. This is what we call a hanging indent. It's easy to do, but it has to be done correctly. What a hanging indent does is set off the names so it's easy to look things up, okay? In my dissertation, which is 240 pages, there are some 20-odd pages in addition to the 240 of works cited entries. If they weren't in alphabetical order, logically put, nobody'd ever read my paper because they wouldn't want to look up and see where I got my stuff. It would be too much trouble, okay? Look up, I will put some hanging indent. I'm writing this down. I'll put up some YouTubes on hanging indent. Well, no, I won't. You do it. Look it up on YouTube. It'll show you how to do a hanging indent for MLA. By the way, YouTube is a third source, but be careful with it because it may not be up to date with the new 8th edition of the MLA handbook. Make sure you know that it's the correct one. But even if it's last year's, it might help you because they will have illustrated how you do those things, okay? Now, send me questions. We will have on Thursday the works cited page due. On Friday, the quiz over this YouTube. And the paper is due next week. Okay? It has to be turned in before Friday. And it's turned in on Blackboard. And I will open the place for you. If there's no place open for you to turn something in, send me an email. But don't send me papers by email. Okay? We've done our last thing by email, unless I change my mind tomorrow. Okay? All right. Hang in there. This is the first paper. You're going to make it, but you have to look things up. Okay? Have a great week.